Kiwi Yarns with Brodie Kane.
Kia ora te whānau and welcome to Kiwi Yarns. Today's guest, and I proudly said this last time, and I will say it again, is a great woman I am proud to call my friend. Not only is she my friend, she has mentored me throughout my career and supported me through the good and bad parts. And I am going to do my damnedest today not to cry. Today, Ali Moore is back on Kiwi Yarns because she has written a deeply personal, confronting and brave book that hit me in the guts. It hit me in the guts, the heart and the soul. It's here with me. No Words for This is out now. Ali, thank you for coming on Kiwi Yarns again.
Thank you for having me. I got your text after you read the book. You made me cry too.
Sorry. And you know what? And I will get to this. Hilariously, we were on the beach talking about this interview. He said, I'm looking forward to seeing you, Brodes. We'll have some fun. And so I'd like to think we will, but we're not going to start super fun.
Okay.
We're going to go.
Understood.
And my first question is, how are you today?
I'm okay. I'm finding this period leading up to the release of the book quite intense, and like a little bit, I've got a little bit of anxiety. It's hard to tell though these days, Brodes, whether that's actual anxiety or menopause anxiety. So like I'm just a little, but I expected that, you know. It's a big thing to put a book like this out, and I would expect to be a wee bit nervous, yeah.
As someone I call a dear friend, there's a lot in this book that I didn't know, and I think it's fair to assume there'll be a lot in this book that a lot of your friends don't know.
Still, yes.
Still. Who may feel like I felt that my heart ripped out for you. Have you an action plan for this? For all your friends that get their heart ripped out for you? Do we need to make one?
No, perhaps we should make one.
Okay.
Can you help me?
Yes, no, okay. Because I already said, I'll have to message the troops, give them a bit of a warning.
I hadn't even thought of that. And I suppose I should say right up front, you know, we don't really use trigger warning anymore because that can actually trigger a trauma response in people.
Yeah.
But when you read this book, you need to, you know, if you're a survivor, you need to take care of yourself. Make sure that you've got, you know, you're in a place and you've got the ability to take care of yourself. That's probably the best way to say it.
I will say, and people were going, gosh, let's go. We are. But also, I need to stress that it's so beautifully written.
Thank you.
A book filled with your talented writing. And when I stopped reading, I did sit in stunned silence. And the fact that the book is called No Words for This, I didn't have any words for quite some time. So is that a play on words?
Yes, it is. And I actually came up with that title. Quite often as an author, you don't necessarily have total control over, you know, the cover of the book or what the title is, or a bunch of things actually once you hand over the manuscript. But yes, that was I put forward about half a dozen ideas, and that was the one that stuck. So, and it is a play on words, obviously. So a major theme of this book is the importance of words and their meaning in my upbringing, from my father, who was a journalist, and his father, who was a journalist, and then me wanting to be a journalist from the age of 12. Kind of language and the use of it was had all sorts of consequences in our family. So I felt that No Words for This was quite a good title. When I popped it up on LinkedIn, I had one wonderful comment from a bloke who said, I'm really keen to read this, Ali. I'm kind of hoping that it'll be 300 blank pages because of that title, which I found quite funny.
So the book reveals the abuse that your family, you, suffered. I guess, how hard was it? I mean, there's some questions about the fact that the questions I have obviously being about this being something that's so recent in terms of even dealing with, speaking with your sisters, your family. So putting it in a book, how, like, let alone dealing with what you've dealt with, but putting it out there, laid bare for everyone, to 2 years of shutting that laptop, opening it, shutting it, opening it, how, I can't fathom how hard that must have been.
Okay, so there's a couple of things there. I was first approached by a handful of publishers in 2018, early 2018, when I set up the Me Too NZ project at Stuff. I got a few approaches to write a memoir, to write about myself. And I was like, no, I'm too busy. And fast forward 5-6 years, it's probably a good thing that I didn't say yes back then, because some of the crucial events in the book have only happened since 2018. So writing, and in the end, in the final chapters, I was actually writing contemporaneously. Like, I came back from Melbourne, where my family is, and wrote the epilogue about events that had happened just days before. So it kind of tumbled out in a way that it could only ever have been that way. I'm not explaining this very well, am I?
Oh, you
I
are.
didn't necessarily set out to write this book in exactly the way it is. I'm not a planner when I write. It just comes out. So I like the structure of the book because you've got a little bit of flashback going on, and then it ends in a space which is really, really recent and quite dramatic. And the major revelations in the book take place in quite dramatic fashion. I mean, in the writing of the book, there was me, the daughter and sister and survivor, and then there was me, the writer. And there was a split down the middle, because the writer wants this to be a really readable book. You know, I want people to be to think it's a well-written book. But also, as people keep reminding me, there's some really, really, really deeply personal stuff in there. But I think when you're writing memoir, you have an opportunity. And this is the second half of your question, I suppose. You have an opportunity to look back on your life, especially if you're my age, and really start to examine all those bits that you've never put together and what they meant. What was my mother's life like, and how did that influence me and my sisters, and what happened? And that was a fascinating process. But also, as a writer, this was kind of my therapy,
Right.
Being able to say the things that I have not ever said and put them down in writing, that was really therapeutic. And it gave me an opportunity to start reading deeply into the effects of trauma and trauma responses and how they might play out in the mind and body. So it was quite a stretchy process. It wasn't just writing the book. It was hours spent out in the back paddock with headphones on, listening to audiobooks about the subject. And it was a process, took me through a process. But I'm still unsure of how the reaction to the book. I mean, 6 years ago, I'd never breathed a word of this to anyone in my life, and now it's all going to be out there in public. So I'm still unsure how that's going to play out.
The abuse and the way it's detailed, you just mentioned as well, is it's woven into the book as your life goes on. And as you say, it hadn't been spoken about until a phone call from your sister. And, I obviously want people to read the book, but, this phone call with your sister that changed everything in 2018. Can you tell me the way you were living prior to that phone call, and then how your life changed in terms of probably a backflip, a somersault, a catapult, an emotional, insert any other word other than roller coaster, pre then and sort of now? Is there a way to even answer that?
It was an unblocking, I think is the best way to describe it. It was a secret, and then after that call, a secret that we shared, and after that call it was a secret no more. And being able to start talking about it was really freeing, right? Because, and this is, if there is one reason where people say, why did you write this book? If there is one reason, it's because shame and self-blame die in the light. You know, I'm mad with myself. I'm really mad with myself that I kept it inside for so long, because that kind of shame can't survive sunshine and fresh air, you know. And I mean, we've seen this over and over again. People like Chanel Miller, who wrote, is it Know My Name? She was the victim of the Stanford University attack.
Right,
and then there's Shibori Ito, who wrote Black Box Diaries. She's a Japanese journalist who's, I think they've just released a documentary about her case. These books are written so that other survivors can see that it's possible to talk about this, because we don't talk about this. We don't talk about sexual harm in any way in our society, and that's wrong and needs to be changed. And I know it can be changed because we were in the same situation here in Aotearoa with domestic violence 10, 15, 20 years ago, and then Women's Refuge and a bunch of other incredible women have changed that conversation to the point where, you know, the big retailers are now their sponsors, you know. So we can change this as a community if we speak out. So that was kind of the big reason why the book came out of my head in the way that it did.
But it being something that you haven't spoken about to anyone, can you, and I guess, like, would you say pushed it, suppressed it?
Yeah.
But in some ways, it has. This is me. So correct me if I'm. But I look at it and go, okay. So all of these horrible things have happened to you. But then I look at this amazing woman and this career and this strength and this like fire in your belly. So even though it was down here, there's something that's kicking off this remarkable, strong woman over here. I feel like that's a statement, but I want you to...
Well, once again, there's probably a couple of reasons for that. Writing the book made me realise how like my mother I am in ways that I hadn't considered for. My mother is probably the most stoic person I've ever met in my life, and a real Protestant work ethic, you know. So, and her edict has always been just get on with it. So there's a little bit of that in me. But also when I started working consistently every day with survivors, when I was working at Stuff, I spoke to hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of women and some men who had gone through equally grim situations and were brave and open and determined, and it kind of started to lift me like a rising tide, you know. I mean, when I was writing the book, I felt their presence. I don't want to be spooky because I'm not like a woo-woo person. You know that, Brodes. but I could feel them sometimes in the room with me. It was almost like, why wouldn't I write the book? But I was already interested in this conversation, probably because at the back of my mind I did know my own, family history.
And like, can I just, so you, like, because you threw yourself into this role as senior correspondent at Stuff, and you led the Me Too NZ investigation team, and we did talk about this last time, but the way that job came about is a brilliant story. It's in the book where you literally throw your pitch at Sinead.
Yeah.
So just share that part of that part first, because that's a ripper.
I've been made redundant 5 times in my career, which you feel me, Broads.
And will you help me with one of mine?
I did.
Thank you for that.
Oh, you're most
Remember you
welcome.
being in that room?
Anytime. I'll hold your hand
special.
anytime. So I was needing to drum up some work, and I was in the Stuff building in Ponsonby here in Tamaki Makaurau, pitching something completely different, a video project actually, and Sinead Boucher, who was the CEO, this was before she actually bought the company, was the CEO at the time, lives in Wellington, but suddenly there she was kind of popping her head in the door of this meeting room. And I was mid-burble about video, and she just popped her head in and said, "Oh, I'm on my way to the airport to go home. I just wanted to say hi." And I had this moment where I thought, get up on your feet, Ellie Moore, like now or never. And I kind of shot out of my chair and I said, Sinead, can I pitch something to you? And she's like, she looked at her watch. She was like, okay. And I said, this was 4 months post Harvey Weinstein. And I said, I want to set up an investigation team here at Stuff looking into harassment cases and the size of the problem here in New Zealand, and I want to do it in a survivor-focused and trauma-informed manner. And she said, what will you need? And I kind of told her, and she just, the exchange took 30 seconds.
It's a good elevator pitch.
And this is why, and I went blah, 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 and then luckily stopped myself before I just, you know how you get
Yes.
when you've got the opportunity.
Yes.
Verbal diarrhea. And she, it was the most extraordinary moment. She looked at me and she said, yeah. She said, come here, work here and do that. And then she turned to lovely Mark Stevens, her editorial executive, and said, I'll leave you with Mark to sort out the details. And she just closed the door and left. Yeah, big moment.
Big moment. This job was hard, and we've spoken at length in private on the last episode that we did about this job. This was all happening around the same time as your family was starting to talk. So I guess when we spoke last, it was November 2020, and we were on Zoom, and you did talk about how hard the job was, and you admitted that you possibly didn't have a super healthy relationship with it, because it was sometimes you'd be up late at night and
Don't dance around the subject, Brodie. I became a complete workaholic.
Yes.
And I still have, I think it's important to say this, it's a little bit off the trail, but I still have some significant regrets about how I handled that job, not only personally, which I'll talk about in a minute, but professionally as well, because I know that there were people that we weren't able to help because there were so many of them. And I feel deeply uncomfortable about that. As a person and as a journalist, you can't. While we asked for people's stories and we started from a place where we believe the survivor, you still got to substantiate the story, right? You have to have some evidence. You have to be able to stack the story up to a publishable level, which also means getting it past the lawyers. So obviously not everybody's story was going to be able to be told. But there were many, 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 many more people than I could help. My nightmare, my recurring nightmare to this day, even 6 years later, is that there may have been people that I never even got around to answering. And that's awful. So there's that. On the personal, I know what you're reaching for here. On the personal level, it was very destructive to my life by the time of the pandemic. And I was so deep down that rabbit hole that I couldn't, I couldn't kind of pull myself out. By which I mean I couldn't stop working. I wouldn't take breaks. I wouldn't take a holiday, especially when I was really in the middle of releasing an investigation, because it's never just one story. You release one story and then people come flooding in and then you've got to do a follow-up and a follow-up after it's the news business. That's how it goes.
For me, reading this, though, you were dealing with all of this in the background too. Do you think that both these things happening, like this heavy as shit job and this sort of like thing that's been sitting inside for 40 years being something that you're now trying to deal with as a family, do you look back and go, well, no wonder I was furious and throwing myself in my work and, things were tough with Carleen and all of these things going on.
I'm not great at introspection, but yeah, I can see that now.
Okay. This can be therapy.
Right?
This is why we've got the couch and the bloody...
Can I lie down?
Yeah. But you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, far out.
No, I do. And sometimes you only see those things in retrospect, which is kind of what therapy is all about, right? About examining past behaviours and feelings, and I can see how, and even the way I dealt with my sister and my nephew when we had our little council of war meetings in Australia during this time to try and decide what we were going to do. I kind of clicked into professional mode there as well, because by that stage I talked to a lot of people who had, done the right thing, and I'm putting that in air quotes because every survivor story and needs different, and what society tells them is the right thing, and gone to police and had their case taken up, which is rare-ish, and, got to trial and been kind of a bit shocked by the whole process, how long it takes, the fact that, sometimes when a survivor walks into the courtroom, they think the Crown prosecutor is their lawyer, and then they're told, no, that's not your lawyer. In fact, you're not a party to this case. You're just a witness. Like, the whole thing's, it's hard. It's hard. And I've spoken to a lot of people who say that given their time again, they wouldn't have gone down that route. So I was able to explain all that to my family members and to help inform their choice. And, we just kept talking about what we wanted to do together.
So I promise everyone there's some great times. There's some great times.
I'm 60 years old, Brodie. My life has not been grim. You've known me for 15 years, right?
Shit, we've had some good times. Oh, don't worry, we are. But I've got I've got my little piece because I remember this as well. And when I read this bit, I was like, oh. So I'm not catching you out here, but when we spoke last, and like you just before, I know you answered this about why you wrote the book, but one of the questions I asked you when we spoke last was sort of, and I guess it's so classically, I could have been a bit more creative, but it was more about like what keeps you going in these roles with something so heavy. And you said, rage, Brodie, rage. And I get to page number 292, and it says, I've always answered with a laugh because the answer is too intense for the asker and for me without the sprinkle of humour as leavening. Rage, of course. Rage drives me. And then I give them my big television smile, which is what I got. But I think, you know, if you could answer that today, just to me, well, there's obviously people listening and watching, but I'm sure there's still plenty of rage, you know, and that drives you. But is there a different answer to that question now?
I suppose that, well, no, that still makes up at least kind of, 50% of the pot. And, there's an endless supply of it, Brodie, because really shitty things, can I say that
Yes.
on the pod? Really shitty things keep happening. Read the Herald website any day of the week, and it's very difficult as a woman not to feel rage. The fact that society finds women's rage unacceptable still is neither here or there to me now at my age. But now I have a final sprint, if you like, because I'm not working as a journalist anymore, and I haven't for 2 years. I've been developing with the barrister Zoe Lawton, a close friend of mine, a new charity, an NGO called Tika, which is a game changer, we believe, for survivors of sexual harm of all kinds, which includes online harm, which is a really currently rising problem. And so the knowledge that all that awareness raising I did as a journalist for 5 or 6 years didn't move the needle on the statistics, which tell us that only 7% of people ever report the dreadful things that have happened to them. If I have an ability to help create that kind of systemic change, then that's what's driving me now.
And it's like you read my questions before I came to you, because I went...
You and me, bro.
Well,
we're connected.
Tika is, and knowing intrinsically the time and energy and passion that you are throwing into this, away from journalism, very much a new phase, a slow process, time-consuming, financially draining.
Yes. Ask any, I am suddenly, unexpectedly, a tech startup founder. And if you ask any other tech startup founder, the stories about sweat equity, they call it, which is basically working for nothing for a long period of time before you get any money in, quite similar, I suspect. Yeah, it's hard.
How long has it been? It's been over two years? Yeah.
And 2020, mid-2023 we really got going. Yeah.
So if you had a Sinead, what do you need? Tell okay. You've bared your soul, and
do I get an
feel like
opportunity
you get a
to
Sinead
pitch?
Boucher pitch.
Oh, unbelievable.
100%.
Right now we need money and expertise.
Yeah.
So Tika needs to be a national charity, a national organisation from moment one, and philanthropic foundations in this country are pretty stretched at the moment, and they don't generally fund charities that need to be big and for everybody from moment one. So that's on one hand, that's the system not working for us on one hand. Do you want to stop and pick those up? That is so what I would do. Yes, please. You have to promise me.
For everyone listening, I just was trying trying to fix my... Where are these bits? I've just picked up my cards and we've just sorted out the microphone. And so you were mid-pitch. So you know what? We'll pick it up. We go again.
Okay. So we're not the kind of charity that people normally see and fund, right? Are set up to fund because we need to be national. We need to be, there are 930,000 New Zealanders who've been personally affected by sexual harm. That's almost 1 million people. Those are our people, right? So, and we're not giving out food and jackets. We are offering a tech platform that people can register with and report what's happened to them. And then we're providing support and legal advice and legal representation. Like it's never been done before. That's what I'm trying to say in a roundabout way. This is completely new. It's quite bold and it's designed to be a game changer, but there's a lot of moving parts and it's a little bit, whoa, what is this? We had one brilliant foundation based in Wellington, the Clare Foundation, who you can't even apply to. Like they've got to find you, who in the middle of last year said, yeah, we like this, and gave us a 7-figure, which was gift, which is life-changing. So that allowed us to set up. But second part of the answer is there are, among those 930,000 New Zealanders, a bunch of people who have a close connection to this issue. As a charity founder, I know that people give to causes that they have a personal connection to. So you might have suffered childhood abuse, or you might have been harassed at work, or you might have been the subject of an assault from a whānau member. Whatever it is, you have insight into this issue, and you might be a high net worth individual who's super keen to see this work. Then we want to talk to you. I want to come and have lunch with you and tell you why why our process is so needed and the difference it can make in not only in people's lives, but in the way the criminal justice system works. While it's, 3 or 4 years in, we're expecting to see more early guilty pleas, probably even a faster trial process, because more people involved in a case means better evidence, more likelihood that the police are able to take it forward because they'll meet the Solicitor General's bar. I mean, I could bore you for lunch for hours with this stuff, but we need support, and money for charities is, and money from the government has shrunk in recent years. You'll have seen all the reports of charities, great charities, having to shut down. So that's the first thing we need. We also need legal expertise. We're setting up a pro bono system where people in the legal field can donate hours to Tika and help in that way. And we'll make it really, really easy for you too. So there's a lot that people can do. And I think the best way I can explain it is, all that aside, all the prevention and the difference we can make to people's experience of the justice system, and the various ways we can bring them accountability, is we are creating a community. There will be a place that people who have until now felt incredibly alone and isolated can come and register and become a client of Tika and know that they are part of a community that didn't exist before. That is the crux of it all. Because how have I been able to get through my trauma? By knowing that there are all those other survivors who I've spoken to personally who've had a similar experience to me. Now I might cry. Pass me a tissue. No.
Do you want one?
No, I'm good. I'll be fine.
I think
Is that too much?
no, no.
I mean, that's the guts of
No,
it.
it's you deserve to be able to say that after this. And one of the other things before I feel like I kind of want to. No, shit, I know where I'm going now.
Okay.
Oh God. Okay. There's another story in the book that I picked up on, which made me grab my battle gear, ready to ride at dawn with you, and I'm like. I'm sorry, we have to talk about it. It's
Tell me.
beautifully written, but oh my God, you attended a Baptist high school.
I did.
And in year 10, so you were 15 years old when you did this. We're in the 70s in Australia. You get a detention for making the whole class of girls walk out because there is this awful video playing about anti-abortion. Yeah. And so as someone that's had an abortion and you know that story and the shame that can be associated with even discussing abortion and I would like to think we've come a long way
I hope so.
in being able to discuss it. But when I read about you doing that at 15 years old, getting all the girls to stand up and walk out of class, I mean, you're 15.
Yeah.
That is remarkable that this strength that you had back then.
That's the rage. It's always been there. I didn't know before that moment that I was strong enough to do something like that. It just bust out of me. I can't, I remember, abortion in Australia was largely illegal up until around that time. It was a huge debate. So for somebody who, not all of my peers read the newspaper or listened to the radio, no podcasts back in those days, but I did, that was part of our family practice, family vibe. And so I kind of knew what was going on. I knew that several states in Australia were looking at imposing bans and that doctors and friends of people seeking abortions could be swept up in that legislation as well. And when I realised that the relief teacher was going to show us this scungy old VHS tape, it was probably brand new at the time.
Scungy old VHS tape.
When she slammed that into the player, I realised quite quickly what was about to unfold. And I couldn't sit there and listen to it, Brodie. I just would have exploded. So my reaction was to get us all out of there as quickly as possible. And that it was a pretty unheard of thing to do at my very strict girls' school. But I felt kind of cool afterwards.
Yeah.
I wasn't, I hadn't thought about it beforehand, but it was a reaction.
It's funny because when you say about that rage, I can feel the exact rage of the first time I saw the anti-abortion protesters outside Christchurch Hospital, and I think it's the same rage, Ellie. I think it was like, first of all, I'm pretty sure I was in the middle of a long run. It was like a 20K, and I was sort of at the business end of it, and then I saw them and was like, what the fuck?
What did you do?
Well, I ran around Hagley Park because there's a Christchurch Hospital for people, is in Hagley, essentially in Hagley Park, and they were standing outside the hospital, and I ran around. I had one more loop. I had a loop to do, so I sort of had 4.5 Ks to stew on it, knowing that I was going to go back round and run past them, and at this, I had an abortion a few years prior, and I was incensed that
I can picture you, a little bit flushed in the face,
Yeah.
pounding along, getting angrier at every stride.
And I rang Mum and I said, Mum, these people are outside the hospital and this with awful signs. How dare they do that at a place where people are vulnerable? whether they're going for an abortion or going for cancer treatment. This is a hospital, you know. And I said, I think I've got to say something. And I was like, and, you know, I'm going to film it because it needs to go. I need to, it's like a moment. And so I did. And I yelled out, go home. Go home. My womb has nothing to do with you.
Oh, great statement.
And I filmed it and then I put it on social media and, you know, and I've never, to this day, I've never had so many messages, and it was
really,
it was that thousands, and I would say only a very small percent were, you know, I could write them myself, the abusive ones, but thousands of women who were like, "You do not know what this means to me," and that was my moment.
Community.
Yeah,
right.
Like
I cannot
you say.
overstate with issues like this, and they're often women's. I don't like the term women's issues, but they're often health issues or safety issues that largely pertain to women. And we're taught by society to keep it inside. And what that does is rob us of community. And community is, in that sense, and in the sense that I was explaining before with Tika, is healing. Or it can be.
And you can, do you feel as well, like, I know you're pretty good at with taking on the kind of cliche, man hater, angry woman, or insert whatever you want to call us here. Is that why, like, it's the same with if the super religion people come in at me, that I now can just, it doesn't get me? Is that,
yeah,
doesn't get you?
Yeah, I'm pretty practiced at ignoring that shit now. You know, I got a lot of it. It was an eye-opener at the beginning of Me Too NZ. You know, the pinnacle of it was, or the nadir of it was the cartoon that ran in a newspaper owned by the people that I worked for that depicted me as a witch on a broomstick flying through the air with my fellow witches. And I was like, oh, I just got to own that, eh?
Far out.
Even though it didn't make sense, you know, witch hunts, as I say in the book, were persecution campaigns against women.
Yeah.
But anyway, let's not let logic interfere with, you know, a good attack campaign. Yeah, I'm pretty good. I'm unsure about what the book may kick off, but I don't really care because I know it's going to be useful, maybe useful for survivors to hear my stories. So,
have you thought about that you will be adding that you're a survivor now to when people now want to hear from you or want your help, that's there?
I'm not entirely sure I know what you mean.
So up until people read this book, they don't know that you yourself have been abused.
Yeah.
And what do you think all those people that you've helped, knowing that...
Oh, I told most of them.
Oh, you did tell most of them?
Yeah. So when a survivor comes to you as a journalist and you write their story, or this is... Actually, I can't speak for everybody. This was my process. We made sure that we right from the beginning understood that survivors of trauma, whatever kind of trauma it is, don't necessarily tell their story to a journalist in a linear fashion. So you don't normally get it all neatly, you know, I can never think of the word, in a chronological way. So, and that in a journalist who's never done this kind of work before or studied trauma-informed methods can be a real red flag, you know, unreliable source perhaps. And that's our training going way back that tells us that. But with these people, you often needed to talk to them 2, 3, 4 times to piece it together. and sometimes they would go away for a month and not answer your calls, and then they would come back when they were ready. That's why the work was really expensive to do and took a long time. But you had some deeply intimate work to do. There was one investigation I did where our lovely lawyer, who I love dearly, Robert Stewart KC, read my first draft and then asked me to do a forensic examination of 136 pages of text messages and sexting between two people. That it was quite detailed work. So, with these exchanges with survivors, there's always a point where you say, I understand because I've been there too. I never went into the details, but generally speaking, there were many opportunities to assure them that I knew what they were talking about.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, for the wider public and a lot of people that I know that don't know, it might be a little confronting. But that's the thing, Brodie. There's so many of us. This is so common. So common. I always spit out that statistic that we've all heard. 1 in 3 women and 1 in 7 men. Now, that is such a prevalence rate that it skims over most people's heads because they actually can't, if you've never experienced any kind of sexual harm, you can't actually, your brain can't take in that means that all of us know somebody. We might not know we know, but we all know somebody. So my story, yes, people might find it quite confronting, but it's so common, It's just not, not many people get to write a book about it.
Do you think that people might see a vulnerability? I mean, look, as a friend, you've been a friend of mine for a long time, and you genuinely are one of the strongest people I know. And the shit that's been flung at you over the years, you've got these like lightning speed defences. Always, which I've always loved, and you've taught me how to be me and be a strong woman. I think it's like nice to see some vulnerability too. What do you think about that?
Yeah, well, when you work in television, people have you'll know this. When you work in the media, people develop what's called a parasocial relationship with you. So they see you on Fair Go or on the pod or on Instagram. You're actually in their space every day, and they feel they know you, but you don't know them, which is a kind of odd relationship, right? And I've forgotten the question.
No. It's about vulnerability.
Oh, vulnerability. Oh, yeah. So when you write a book about your life, you get to slowly reveal all the shit that nobody knew, right? And that includes I was bullied as a child because I had a physical deformity, and that shaped my life from the age of 5 to the age of 15. It was a pretty intense 10 years. People wouldn't know that about me.
No.
So there's a lot that you have to decide whether to put in or leave out. I probably wrote an extra 50,000 words that the editors took out because they were all, that's a great yarn, Ellie, but it doesn't really fit.
Yeah.
So you would have found that writing your book too. There are some stories that
Mine was about
love.
shitting in the jungle though, Ellie. I mean,
that's the one thing that's not in my book. Do you know when I finished the manuscript and then I read your book, I thought, my God, every memoir I've read has some kind of public shitting situation and I don't. What's wrong with me?
Don't worry, there's still time. There's still time.
Even Rebel Wilson's book shows that.
Shitting.
Yeah. What's wrong with me?
but let's be honest, because my word, your life has been something. I mean, you're far more away from the public eye.
Only very old people recognise me. Like I was at pub quiz last night, and there was a new member of the team, and she was sitting like this far away from me. And sorry,
that's your glasses.
And she said, she glanced at me, and she went, "I know you from somewhere," and then immediately turned away, went back to her burger. So yeah, I mean, I don't get recognised very often these days.
But if you think about like in the thick of it, in the prime of it, you're married to Simon Dallow. On that, Simon, has he read the book?
Yes.
He has, and
I gave it to him as a courtesy.
Yeah. And so, but like you guys were under such an intense microscope when you were reading the news together, married together, dubbed Ken and Barbie. Oh, like even saying that out loud.
Wasn't my favourite
either. Oh
my
God, far out. Then you'll break up, and then falling in love with Carleen. You were harangued, harassed, paparazzi. People that don't think that paparazzi has ever been a thing in New Zealand. Like, and you talk about that in the book as well. But when you look back at that period of time, and even when it's like, I'm just going to see things that still pop up on the internet, and there's one like that's like a photo montage of you over the years, and you're like glamorous frocks, and then there's a paparazzi shot of you and Carleen, and it's like there's still a photo album of things. I mean, when you look back, are you like, that was wild?
My daughter told me recently that she sometimes rolls out that story as a little bit of a dinner party, like yarn, and like all of her Gen Z mates that she tells it to are like, "Oh, that actually happened?" And she's like, "Yeah, I was 11." But yeah, it was wild. It was wild, and it was. I'd like to think it wouldn't happen these days. I'm not entirely sure, but it was the worst thing about that was when challenged how the people involved justified themselves and minimised me. The CEO of Bauer Media at the time in 2016 said, why would anybody be concerned with what Ali Moore thinks? It's that kind of, it's gaslighting, isn't it? So, yeah, it was intense, and I was a mess, and, Carleen had to kind of drag me weeping out of the shower. Yeah, it was it was awful. It was awful.
You say that you'd hope that it wouldn't happen now, because when you look at things, I mean, was there any of that? Like, if we look back, is any of that justifiable in the public's interest?
I looked into that, and there are, I mean, it's not something that's legislated, and it's often something that's not written clearly down in any searchable space, unfortunately. The codes of conduct for journalism or media vary around the world. The one I quote in the book is from Britain, and it makes a good point. There is a very clear distinction and a set of questions that a journalist must ask themselves when they are weighing up what is in the public interest versus what the public might be interested in. Two completely different things. And I think that gets conflated sometimes.
Yeah.
So what I got was, we know that our readers will be interested to see these paparazzi pictures of Alison and her new partner.
And I think, but do you also think as well, because what year was that? They were
2010.
Yeah.
So it's a long time ago now.
Well, it's funny though, because you think, it's not that long ago, but you actually think, if you think now, like, but back then, oh my gosh, she's now a lesbian, or what? She's run away with a woman. I mean,
Well, a lot of people got completely the wrong end of the stick and assumed that I'd left my marriage for a woman, which kind of ratcheted up the shock factor even more. I remember Colin Espiner, the journalist, wrote a review about 7 Sharp after its first dreadful night on air in 2013. Let's not go there because that was the worst year of my life.
I remember that year well, Ellie.
Oh, I know. I actually leaned on you quite hard.
Vice
we
versa.
leaned on each other. It was awful for lots of reasons. But yeah, he wrote a review of 7 Sharp and he said exactly that so blah, 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 Ellie Moore left her husband. And I rang him up and I said, excuse me, dude, where'd you get that information from? And he had to withdraw it and apologise.
Good. Good. Right. Okay, I'm bringing us, we're right. Are we rising? Do you reckon we're rising?
Sure, let's
hockey
go. Stick this.
Fair Go. Let's talk about Fair Go because that's one of your favourite jobs.
Show.
You'll remember working with Brian McCormick, and she always used to say that it was the plucky little battler, and I love that saying as well. You were so good at that job. That was when you were working there that you helped me with my first ever piece to camera training that I ever had. What
did I tell you? Do you remember?
Oh, where did we go? I know where we went. Okay, we went to Victoria Park.
Oh, yes, I
we went to
remember.
Victoria Park, and you were showing me the variations of the ones because obviously you were showing me more that not just like a straight news to camera, like crossing live type scenario. It was more like the more interactive ones. So I think we were by a bush, and we were using the bush as if it was some sort of prop, and you were like, we'll pretend the bush is this and then we're going to take everyone over to the bush. So I think that's where
I remember now.
Yeah. I don't even know how old I was. Fair Go.
Look at you.
2014 maybe, 2015, 2014. Because like your career, the jobs that you've had, there's been so many and there's so many great stories about how you got jobs and the challenges of them. But that's one I wanted to talk to you about, Fair Go, because that is also sticking up for the little guy.
Oh, I loved that show. I loved working on that show. And as I say, there's a chapter on Fair Go in the book, because it was my favourite job ever. I was reluctant to join at first because at that stage I was reading the news, doing breakfast, can't remember, and which is also a good job but with terrible hours. And as soon as I started working at Fair Go, I just loved it, It's what people don't realise about Fair Go, because it had this kind of hokey, like, little battler, veneer. Nobody really knew how much rigorous journalism there was under the hood, Virtually my favourite part of my career were those Tuesday meetings where we'd all pile into the meeting room and you'd play your unfinished piece, so your draft of your story, and everybody would sit in utter silence for 7 minutes. Gordon Harcourt would be scribbling notes, and then they'd just go at you like, you need to take I don't understand what that means. You need to go back and check. And it was just so rigorous. I love that shit. So, and plus, I had experiences like confronting a fraudster on his tractor in the middle of a muddy field. And there's a fine line with those kind of walk-ins, as you probably know, because once you're asked to leave, if you don't leave and you're asked to leave, after that you're trespassing. So those situations became a delicate negotiation, that how much information can I get out of this person without crossing any lines. I think one of my stories, Briar made everybody sit down and watch and say, that's how you do a walk-in. It was just, so much fun. I mean, the story in the book that I've told about Fair Go is when we went down to Christchurch after the earthquake, after the February 2011 earthquake. And that was not fun. That was deeply affecting. But your own fair goes, God, I cried when they took it off air.
Yeah.
I really did. I really felt that very keenly.
Such fond memories, though, eh?
Great memories. And you were my desk mate, Brodie.
I know.
And you kind of carried me through some pretty tough times. Just having you, your little ray of sunshine in the office was just magic, really.
Can you remember this story? Here we go.
Uh-oh.
Can you remember, because I was, I don't know whether this was actually the Fair Go or the Q&A. Oh, it was the Q&A, when I was working on Q&A. And I was sat with all of you guys up in the old part of that's no longer there, that
Level
part
3,
of TVNZ.
yeah.
And can you remember, I must have come back, I'd come back from Fiji and I'd met a dude and you guys were all deeply excited. And then Janet McIntyre came and cooked a potato gratin.
Yeah. Yes.
Potato gratin at my house because you guys were like, what are you cooking him for dinner? And I was like,
That's right. He's coming over for dinner, you said. And we were all like, strategy.
what are we doing? What are you cooking? I was like,
And then Janet, who is like a titan of broadcast journalism in this country, comes to your flat and cooks you a potato gratin. Oh, that's one of my favourite stories.
But
That's so
I
good.
know. We drove to the supermarket together because she's like, you're not. Where's the carb? I was like,
Where's the car?
I love that. Yeah, that was. I have such beautiful memories of that.
If you're listening, Janet, we miss you.
I know.
I loved working with Janet.
Same. I've thrown my pen. I don't need it. Horses.
Oh, yeah.
Your love for horses started so young, which was when the milk run was done with the horses.
So this is a real weird thing. When I was writing this bit, which is early on in the book because I'm still a little child, I was like, nobody's going to believe this. But in the early 1970s, in suburban Melbourne, in what's now a very yuppie, suburb not that far out from the city, our milk was delivered in bottles by horse and car. I'm old, but that makes me sound 100. So when I was little, when I was like 4 or 5, because kids were allowed to do whatever they wanted back in those days, my sister and I would get up at 5 a.m. when we heard the clippy clop of the horses come down the street, and we would get dressed and run outside and jump on the back of the cart and help deliver the milk bottles to everybody's doorstep. That's how far back this is.
So cool.
And the horses, I found out because I was a resourceful wee child, were kept in a stable behind a suburban house in the next street. So that was my hangout place, and I just became obsessed with horses. There are a lot, Brodie, of jokes and memes about horsey girls, and everybody thinks we're a little bit weird, and I reckon they're probably right in some ways. Horses make you poor, for example. There are other hobbies that you could do and, still have some money for yourself, but they get into your head and heart, and they are healing. They are incredibly healing. I took my horse to the beach for a ride last week, and I hadn't ridden in a very long time because book and job and all that. And I walked back in, and Carlene, covered in shit, and Carlene looked at me and went, "Look at your face. Look at your face." I'm like, what? She's like, "You've got to ride more because it's so good for your mental health." And she's right. Horses have been that for me my entire life. And I've gone at least a decade at a time without owning or riding. But when I moved out to the country in the middle of the pandemic, I was one of those people that kind of had a brain explosion and sold up and moved to the country. I was able to achieve what was then a 50-year dream. That's another thing I'd like people to take from the book. that is literally never too late, especially when you, you can't be an All Black at 56. But if you have interests that you had that made you happy at some time in your life and there's a way of still pursuing them, then go for it. Like, I waited 50 years to own my own land and keep my horses on my own land, and I did it, and I'm obsessed.
You have to tell people the Horse of the Year story.
Oh, gosh.
Oh no, you do. Like, just
It's kind of embarrassing.
no, it is not embarrassing. It's when you told me that over a margarita last year. Oh, maybe it was
How
before.
unusual.
But like, no, it should be a movie. It's such a great story.
Involves a friend of yours too.
Yes.
So, okay, I'll try and make it quick. When I moved into my house, I bought a horse, and I lucked into buying the perfect horse for me. Her name's Bex, and she's very large, enormous, 17 one hands high. And she's an older lady like me, and she's just steady as a rock. And I bought her just to have fun on, and then I started with some friends doing a few kind of low-level dressage competition. That's like horse dancing. You've seen it in the Olympics. Yeah. And we came second in our first week competition, and we were doing okay. But I love dressage, but I just got a bit bored. And I realised the horse wasn't made for this. She was a bit bored too. So I said to my coach, who's a close friend of mine, could you give me a few jumping lessons? And I hadn't jumped a stick on the ground in 40 years. And she's like, yeah, of course. We'll start with poles on the ground. So that was June 2023.
Yeah.
And then this is testimony to my coach, Amy McCambridge's skill. Within 6 months, we were jumping a metre, courses of a metre high, and had qualified in the space of one weekend for Horse of the Year, because you've got to build up a certain amount of points.
Yeah.
And it's terrible because people go to shows every weekend and they get a few points here and points there. And we went to one show in November over 2 days and got enough points to qualify and went to Horse of the Year. Which is crazy. And, of course, we get down there. It's like, as I think I told you the other day, it's like a music festival but with 1,000 horses. It's absolutely exhausting and terrifying. And I was there competing against the best in the country, who were all looking at me and going, who the hell is she? Like, where did she come from?
Well, her and who? Which horse she rode in on?
Yeah, exactly. And then I was just about to ride into one of my classes, and this lovely lady, about my age, maybe a bit older, walks over and asks the question, who the hell are you? And it turns out it was Gracie's mum.
Yeah.
Lee. And Lee, we had a chat in the few minutes that we had, and she's one of the kind of doyens of show hunter. That's what I do, show hunter, which is jumping, but at a bit more. It's a bit more controlled and staged than show jumping, which tends to be real fast and flashy. And then 5 minutes after I talked to Lee, I went into the 95 centimetre championship class and came third. And Amy, my Colleen was there ringside, and Amy, my coach, was in the collecting ring, which is the ante-room to the ring. And she was checking her phone as the results came out, and she looked up at me, still on my horse, and she said, you came third. And I burst into tears. It was just like insane.
Because there was all that. I don't know but your horse didn't have shoes on. You didn't have. You had none of the. There was no bells and whistles to your presentation. To what you.
Yeah, competition. Equestrian competition is a very expensive sport, and you can pay thousands for the gear. I have a 15-year-old saddle that cost me kind of, $1,700, and I even found that a bit ouchy. So not all the flash gear. I bought myself a new pair of jodhpurs to go for Horse of the Year. My horse, I like to keep her barefoot, she was the only barefoot horse jumping that time. And I looked around at one point and I thought, I'm the only person not wearing spurs. But I didn't know.
But did you care?
No.
No.
I don't need spurs on my horse. No. It's kind of the opposite. Once she gets a sniff of a jump, she's like, let me at it.
And when then you got third and people were like, well, no, who actually is that? she's but also you haven't entered a competition since because it exhausted you.
No, it really wiped me. We got back it took us 12 hours to drive back from the Hawke's Bay, and I basically put her in a paddock, and I've ridden about 6 times in the years since. I'm just about to ease back into it because I know it's good for me. But Bex is a lovely girl, but she doesn't really care about doing things with me. Like, she could care less if I lived or died. She wants to be in the paddock with her mates. That's what horses want. So she's had a lovely year off, and so have I, and we're just about to get back into it. So I need to notch up the Pilates and get match fit.
Yeah. Hey, you recently turned 60, and it's like birth certificate or I don't believe it, and I stand by that. But also, let's embrace 60. Actually, the guest that people will hear after you, Rebecca Gibney, also recently turned 60.
Oh, fangirl.
And she, even though people will hear this after I interviewed her before you, but she was like, she is full throttle, man. She is like, I'm saying, yes, I'm going this way. You go to Queenstown, you bungee jump, you've got this such important work with Tika. It'll be certainly, I hope that this book ride goes okay, but are you as hungry and passionate and the fire in the belly very much there for this next phase?
Yeah, I really am. I'm not I will always work. Probably when I'm a bit more doddery than I am now, I will write, but I don't think I'll ever stop doing that. So there's probably more books, I guess. But right now, this is a sprint, to a point where we've made this system for survivors work. Yeah. I don't feel like slowing down. And I've come to terms with all that. When you've worked in the media, as you and I have, that the emphasis that's put on, hey, look, it's quite freeing to be beyond that. I went through a stage in my life when I was really vain, actually, really quite vain, and absorbed with how I looked. And I'm through that now, and I don't really care. So I'll put on makeup for you, Brodie, 'cause,
It's only because we've got these lines far out.
But no, I can hear Carlene in my ear going, yes, you do. I care a bit less than I used to, because you've got to accept that, unless you're going to spend your life on a surgeon's table, you've got to accept that growing old means the changes in your body and the way you look. Really to be happy, you have to get to a point where you're okay with that. So, yeah.
I know that, and now I'll get a message being like, "Oi, but Carlene's a private person and your relationship, and I appreciate and respect that privacy."
She'll blow your phone up, that girl. I know,
but she's a beautiful soul, and I dare say she is probably her and your children. Have they been monumental in actually getting you through all of this?
Oh yeah, yeah. Yeah. They've all been incredible. I've had to do, just to bring it full circle, I've had to, over the past 6 years, kind of redefine what family means in my case. And my sisters and my nephew and his partner and Carlene and my kids, incredible support, like rock solid. It makes me shiver. Really. I mean, the kids read the book, obviously. There wasn't anything going in that book that they weren't okay with, and the same with Carlene, and the sisters and all that. Paris, my daughter, had read just a couple of chapters and then texted me furiously saying, "You've made me cry." So no, they've been super, and their attitude is, I think Joel said to me, it's your story, Mum. Just put it out there. So yeah.
Gosh, I feel like we could probably, we do at times talk all day, which is great, but and I love that. But I'm going to give you your Kiwi Yarns quick fire questions.
All right,
in a moment.
Gotcha.
But
Gotcha.
I want to say that, oh damn it, you are such a wonderful friend, and you're a great supporter of all your friends, who will now learn about their friend. I told you last night, I texted you, and I said that I was already for years in awe of your strength. And the irony being, as I said to you, I now don't have any words to describe how strong I think you are. So, I'm not supposed to cry on your sad book. But I just want to thank you for you already have changed a lot of people's lives, and there'll be strangers' lives that you've changed. But I think I can say on behalf of me and my mum and women that you are friends with, that I'm friends with, thank you. And we're here for you for the next part of this. So thank you. Thank you for teaching me about strength.
Thank you, Brodie. I really appreciate that. You know what you're going to get now? You're going to get every rude and horrible comment that I'm sent on social media, I'm just going to send straight into the thread.
Yes.
If I have to suffer,
yes,
you have to suffer.
Yeah, no, as I said, we ride at dawn. I'm with you. We're on. Okay, you might have to teach me how to ride a horse. But
you're a dear friend. I love you dearly.
Right back at you. And with that, Kiwi Yarns quickfire.
Right, okay.
Right. What's your kai for your final feed?
Carlene is an excellent cook.
Yes.
She makes a chicken pie that I would die for. Ooh. So 100, and she doesn't make it for me often enough. I can eat it every day. So that.
Shit, she's got it a mug too. So, oh yeah, I need to come out for a mug. This one. If I gave you a magic wand to change one thing in Aotearoa, what would it be?
I have to say, don't I? All forms of sexual harm eliminated in the wave of a wand.
Great.
Don't hurt people. Magic wand. Boof.
If only that was something I could actually give you.
I wish.
You've answered this one before. Favourite Kiwi artist or song?
And it is still Don McGlashan and the Muttonbirds at Dominion Road.
I love it. Where would you love to go in Aotearoa that you haven't been?
I've never been to the West Coast.
Which West Coast? South Island West Coast? Oh.
Isn't that a shocker?
Yeah.
Never been.
Oh,
I don't think. Maybe just for half a day when I was in 1994 or something. But yeah, I'd like to go over and check that out.
You bloody Braden to take you down there.
Yeah?
Yeah, exactly. He's from Hokitika. Final question. You're stranded on the Auckland Islands, okay? Mm-hmm. In particular, Disappointment Island. What are the 5 things you'd take to avoid being not only stranded, but disappointed?
I would take tequila, and I would take books. I would take my horse because horses can swim.
Oh.
Because and that's 2 in 1 because I almost forgot means of not being stranded, like transport. Means transport.
Yeah. So the horse.
How many's that? 1, 2, 3,
3.
4. Am I allowed to take a person or no?
Yeah.
Oh, my partner, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's 4, isn't it?
That's
Was it
5,
books,
isn't it?
Books, tequila, horse, Carlene.
Carlene. Oh, God. Glasses. I need my glasses because I'm old.
Perfect.
What a pathetic answer.
No, because you might need them as well after the tequila. Ooh, I can't see. Thank you.
Well, that was a lot.
It was, well, yeah, that was super special to do that. I never thought I'd be, I don't know. It overwhelmed me in a way, but I'm so glad we've done this really immediately after reading it. And I am here for you, and I just thank you for doing this, and I love you, and thank you for coming on Kiwi Yarns.
So grateful. Thanks, Brodes. Right back at ya.
And thank you everyone for listening and coming along for that. That was really, really special. That was Kiwi Yarns. We'll see you next week.